Close your eyes just for a breath. Can you feel it? The world has stopped moving, the noise has faded, the sun has set. But inside you, nothing has stopped at all. Your body is begging for rest. But your mind is still at your desk, still in that conversation, still holding everything you did wrong today, everything left undone, everything that might go wrong tomorrow. We were taught to work until we drop, to hustle, to push, to keep moving, but no one taught us how to stop. We lie down, but we carry the day with us. We close our eyes, but we grip the world even tighter. And tonight, like so many nights before, you're here exhausted but awake, desperate for peace but tangled in your own thoughts. Here's what the Buddha understood 2,500 years ago. Sleep isn't the problem. Holding on is. He didn't just teach meditation for monks in robes. He taught practices for the moment your head touches the pillow, for the threshold between day and night, for making rest not an escape but a ceremony of release. The Buddha called night a bridge. Cross it with awareness, and everything changes. Tonight I'm sharing 10 practices from the ancient sutras, not as rules but as refuges. You won't need all 10. Most practitioners choose 3 to 5, but I'll share them all so you can discover which ones feel like finally setting something down. Get comfortable. Dim the lights. Let your body sink. You don't have to fix anything tonight. Just be here. Breathe. Listen. Let's walk this bridge together. Imagine this. You've just walked through your front door after one of those days. The kind where everything felt like too much. Traffic that tested your patience. Emails that wouldn't stop. Conversations that left you drained. You drop your bag, kick off your shoes, and for the first time in hours you exhale. Something shifts when you cross that threshold. The chaos stays outside. Inside is yours. Inside you can finally stop performing. That feeling that crossing from the world's demands into your own space is what the Buddha understood about the human heart. We need sanctuary, not just physical walls, but something deeper, a place where we're held, where we can put everything down. In Buddhist monasteries, every single practice begins the same way. Before morning meditation, before evening chanting, before any teaching or study, monks take refuge. It's not a ritual they do because someone told them to. It's the doorway, the threshold they cross from the ordinary into the sacred, from scattered into gathered, from lost into found. This same practice, spoken by monastics for 2,500 years, works just as powerfully at your bedside, because taking refuge isn't about religion. It's about homecoming. It's about saying to yourself, to the night, to whatever holds this existence, I've been carrying the world today, now I'm setting it down. Now I remember what's true. Now I come home. The Buddha taught this as the first step of every spiritual act. Because he knew something essential about human consciousness. We get lost. We forget who we are beneath the roles we play. We become so entangled in doing that we forget how to simply be. Taking refuge is the practice of remembering. And when you do this before sleep, you're drawing a line in your awareness that says, the day of striving is complete. The night of release begins now. This is why monks have done this for millennia. This is why it still works. Because the human heart hasn't changed. We still need to know we're safe to let go. The 3 refuges are called Tisarana in Pali, the language of the earliest Buddhist texts. They're deceptively simple. 3 short statements, but what they create is profound. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. These 3 form something like a spiritual architecture, a structure that holds you when everything else feels uncertain. Let me explain what each one means. Not in religious language, but in the language of your actual life. First, Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha. This doesn't mean you're converting to a religion or bowing to a distant deity. The Buddha was a human being who woke up. He was born, struggled, searched, suffered, and found a way through. Taking refuge in the Buddha means taking refuge in the possibility of awakening, in the truth that freedom is real, that others have walked this path and found peace, which means you can too. It's refuge in wisdom itself, in the light of consciousness that sees clearly, in the reminder that you're not doomed to suffer forever, that transformation is possible, that there is a way. When you say these words before sleep, you're remembering, I don't have to figure everything out tonight. Wisdom exists, the path exists. I can trust that second. Dhammam saranam gacchami. I take refuge in the Dharma. Dharma means truth, the natural law of how things actually are, the teachings that illuminate reality, the understanding that everything arises and passes, that clinging causes suffering, that letting go brings peace. Taking refuge in the Dharma means trusting that there's an order to existence even when life feels chaotic, that cause and effect are real, that your actions matter, that the way you relate to your experience shapes your experience. It's refuge in truth over delusion, in reality over fantasy, in what actually helps over what temporarily distracts. When you take refuge in Dharma at night, you're saying, I align myself with what's real. I stop fighting reality. I trust the natural unfolding. Third, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Sangha. Sangha means community, the fellowship of all who walk this path, not just monks in robes, but every human being who's trying to live with awareness, who's working to transform suffering, who's choosing wisdom over reactivity. You're not alone in this. Across time and space, millions have struggled just like you. Millions have lain awake at night, wondering if peace was possible. Millions have practiced these same words, found refuge in these same truths. Taking refuge in the Sangha means remembering. You're part of something larger than your individual struggle, that you're held by a lineage of practitioners, that your efforts matter, not just to you, but to the web of all beings trying to awaken. When you speak this refuge at bedtime, you're acknowledging, I'm part of a human family that's been seeking peace for thousands of years. I'm not the first to feel this way. I'm not the only one who struggles. I'm held. These aren't vows that bind you. They're not promises you'll be punished for breaking. They're reminders, orientation points, a way of saying to your scattered mind, come back. Remember what's trustworthy. Remember what actually helps. In the ancient texts, monks take these refuges before any formal practice. Why? Because refuge creates sacred space. It marks a transition from the ordinary mind to the practice mind, from grasping to releasing, and that's exactly what you need before sleep. A clear demarcation, the day is over. The striving stops here. Now I enter the space of rest. Is how you do this. It's beautifully simple. Sit on the edge of your bed, not lying down yet. Feet on the floor, spine naturally upright but not rigid. Bring your hands together at your heart in what's called Anjali Mudra. Palms pressed together gently, fingers pointing upward. This hand position is used across Buddhist cultures as a gesture of respect, gratitude and presence. It signals to your nervous system, this moment is different, I'm present now. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable. Take one full breath. Let your shoulders drop. Now speak these words either aloud or silently in your mind. Speak them 3 times. 3 repetitions is traditional because it deepens the impression, allows the meaning to settle, creates rhythm. In English, the words are, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. Say it once. Slowly. Feel each word. I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. Say it again, letting it sink deeper. I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. If you'd like to use the original Pali, here it is. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami. You don't need to understand Pali. The sound itself carries something, the weight of centuries, the resonance of countless practitioners who've spoken these same syllables, seeking the same peace. You're seeking now, but English works perfectly. What matters isn't the language, it's the intention, the conscious choice to orient yourself toward what's trustworthy. As you speak these words, notice what happens in your body. Does your breathing slow? Does tension release somewhere, your jaw, your shoulders, your belly? Do you feel something settle even slightly? You might notice a sense of relief, like you've been holding yourself together all day, and now you have permission to be held instead. You might feel a subtle shift in your mental state, less frantic, more gathered, less like you have to solve everything, more like you're being guided by something wiser than your anxious thinking, or you might not feel much at all the first time, and that's perfectly fine. This isn't about forcing an experience. It's about creating a consistent threshold you cross each night. After the third repetition, pause. Keep your hands at your heart for a moment. Let the silence hold you. Then release your hands gently. Take one more breath. The refuge is taken. The doorway is crossed. You've marked the beginning of your sacred rest. There's something powerful that happens when you perform the same ritual every night at the same threshold. Your nervous system learns. Think about how bedtime stories work for children. It's not just the content of the story. It's the ritual itself. The same time, the same place, the same soothing voice that signals to the child body, now it's safe to sleep. Taking refuge functions the same way for adults. It becomes a psychological anchor, a consistent signal that says the day is complete. The world's demands end here. Now we enter the space of release. When you take refuge with consistency, your body begins to anticipate rest. The moment you bring your hands to your heart, your mind begins to quiet before you even speak the words. The ritual itself becomes the medicine. But there's something deeper happening too. All day long, you've been functioning as if everything depends on you, your effort, your vigilance, your constant management of 1,000 details. It's exhausting to be the one holding it all together. Taking refuge is the moment you acknowledge, I'm not the one holding this all together. I never was. There's something wiser than my anxious thinking. There's truth. There's the path. There's the vast community of beings all moving toward freedom. I can rest in that. This isn't spiritual bypassing or pretending problems don't exist. It's perspective. It's remembering that you're part of something larger, held by something deeper, guided by something more reliable than your worried mind spinning in the dark. And when you remember that, truly let it in, something in your nervous system exhales. The grip loosens. The hypervigilance softens. Sleep becomes possible, not because you've escaped reality, but because you've returned to what's real. The refuge is taken. The doorway is crossed. You've marked the beginning of your sacred rest. There's a story told in the forest monasteries of Thailand about a young monk who couldn't sleep. Every night, the same pattern. He'd complete evening chanting, return to his small hut, lie down on his thin mat, and immediately his mind would begin its assault. The conversation where he'd been impatient with a visiting lay person, the meditation session where he'd been distracted, restless, counting the minutes until the bell rang, the moment during alms round when he'd felt irritation rise at a barking dog. Every small misstep replayed in vivid detail, every failure magnified in the darkness, his mind prosecuting him for not being further along the path. One evening his teacher found him sitting outside his hut, long after the others had gone to sleep. The old monk sat down beside him without speaking, and they listened together to the night sounds. Insects whined through bamboo, distant frogs. Finally, the young monk confessed, "Ajahn, I review my day each night as we're taught, but it only makes me more agitated. I see my mistakes so clearly. How am I supposed to rest when I know how far I am from the path?" The teacher was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "When you review your day, are you learning or are you punishing?" The young monk opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He didn't know. "There's a difference," the teacher continued, "between reflection and rumination. Reflection looks clearly at what happened, learns from it, and releases it. Rumination circles endlessly like a dog returning to its vomit, finding no nourishment, only the bitter taste of shame." He placed his hand on the young monk's shoulder. "The Buddha asked us to review our conduct, not to torture ourselves, but to learn, to see clearly, to grow, and then to let it go. The day is done. You cannot change what happened. You can only carry the lesson forward. That's the practice. The young monk sat with those words, and slowly he began to understand the difference between wisdom and self-punishment. Perhaps you know this difference yourself. Perhaps you've lain awake replaying your day, not with curiosity but with cruelty, not asking what can I learn, but declaring you failed again. Tonight, you're learning what that young monk learned. How to look back with clarity instead of condemnation. How to close your day with wisdom instead of warfare. This is the practice the Buddha gave to his monastics 2,500 years ago, and it's the practice that will help you sleep tonight. In the Theravada tradition, monks engage in daily reflection as part of their training in sila, ethical conduct and mindfulness. This isn't optional or occasional. It's woven into the fabric of practice, as essential as meditation itself. The Pali term sometimes used for this is pakavekana, which means contemplation or review, but it's more commonly understood simply as wise reflection, the practice of looking back over your actions with honesty and learning. Why do this before sleep? Because unexamined actions become unconscious patterns. What you don't acknowledge, you're doomed to repeat. What you don't bring into awareness continues to operate in the shadows, shaping your behavior without your consent. The Buddha taught that our actions in body, speech, and mind create karma. Not karma in the sense of cosmic punishment, but karma as the simple truth of cause and effect. What you do matters. How you speak shapes reality. What you think becomes the soil in which your life grows. Daily reflection is the practice of tending that soil, of noticing what you've planted today, seeds of kindness or seeds of harm, seeds of wisdom or seeds of confusion, so you can choose more consciously tomorrow. In the Vinaya, the collection of texts governing monastic conduct, monks are instructed to regularly examine their actions against the precepts they've taken, not to generate guilt, but to maintain clarity, to catch small missteps before they become deep grooves of habit. The reflection follows 3 questions, simple but profound. First, what skillful actions did I take today? Skillful means kusala in Pali, actions that lead toward freedom, that don't cause harm, that arise from wisdom rather than reactivity. This might be a moment of patience when you wanted to snap, a kind word offered when you were tired, choosing to pause before speaking. Any moment where you aligned with your values rather than your impulses. This question isn't about pride or self-congratulation. It's about recognition, because what you acknowledge, you reinforce. When you notice the good you've done, you're training your mind to see possibilities for goodness, making those choices more likely tomorrow. Most of us are excellent at failures and terrible at recognizing our worries. This question corrects that imbalance. Second, what unskillful actions did I take today? Unskillful means akusala, actions that arise from greed, hatred, or delusion, that cause harm to yourself or others, that move you away from freedom. The harsh words, the impatient gesture, the moment you acted from fear instead of wisdom. This question requires honesty, but not brutality. You're not looking for reasons to hate yourself. You're looking clearly at what happened so you can understand the conditions that led to it. Why did you snap at your partner? Were you hungry, tired, stressed from something earlier? Why did you waste 2 hours scrolling mindlessly? Were you avoiding something uncomfortable? The Buddha taught that understanding leads to freedom. When you see clearly why you acted unskillfully, you can address the root cause rather than just feeling bad about the symptom. Third, what did I learn today? This is the question that transforms reflection from inventory into wisdom. It asks, given what happened today, the skillful and the unskillful, the easy and the difficult, what do I understand now that I didn't this morning? Maybe you learned that you need to eat lunch before making important decisions. Maybe you learned that you're more patient than you thought. Maybe you learned that a certain person or situation consistently triggers reactivity, and you need a strategy for managing that. This question moves you from judgment to growth, from im-bad to im-learning, and that shift changes everything. In the monastic tradition, this reflection isn't done once in a while when you feel like it. It's daily practice, as consistent as brushing your teeth. Because ethical conduct isn't maintained through grand gestures, but through small, repeated acts of honest self-examination. And here is what's crucial. This practice doesn't end with reflection. It ends with release. Once you've looked clearly, learned what you can, the practice is to let it go. Not to carry it into sleep, not to make it a burden. The day is complete. You've harvested its lessons, now you rest. Sit comfortably on the edge of your bed or in a chair nearby. Take 3 slow breaths to settle your mind. Then gently bring your awareness to the day that's just ended. Start with the first question. What skillful actions did I take today? Let moments arise naturally, don't force it or make a list. Just notice what surfaces. Maybe you held the door for someone. Maybe you chose to listen instead of interrupt. Maybe you took a breath before responding to a difficult email. Maybe you fed yourself nourishing food or got yourself to bed at a reasonable hour. As each one comes to mind, acknowledge it. You might silently say, I see this. This was skillful. Feel what it's like to recognize your own goodness without diminishing it, without immediately listing your failures to balance it out. This isn't ego. Ego would say I'm better than others because I did this. This is simply clear seeing this action aligned with wisdom. I acknowledge that. Then move to the second question. What unskillful actions did I take today? Again, let moments arise without forcing, and here's what's important. When something unskillful comes up, meet it with curiosity, not cruelty. If you snapped at someone, don't just label yourself as bad or impatient. Ask, what was happening before that? What was I feeling? What need wasn't being met? Maybe you were overwhelmed and didn't know how to ask for help. Maybe you were hungry and your blood sugar had crashed. Maybe old pain got triggered and you reacted from that wound rather than from present awareness. Understanding the conditions doesn't excuse the action, but it gives you something to work with. It transforms shame into insight. For each unskillful action you might silently say, I see this, I understand why it happened. Tomorrow I can choose differently. Then the third question. What did I learn today? This might be obvious from what you've already reflected on, or it might be something entirely different. Let your mind settle on whatever feels true. I learned that I need more sleep to stay patient. I learned that I'm capable of more kindness than I give myself credit for. I learned that avoiding difficult conversations only makes them harder. Whatever arises, acknowledge it as the day's teaching, the gift of your lived experience. You can do this practice entirely in your mind, or you can write it down. Journaling has its own power. Seeing your words on paper makes the reflection more concrete, and over time, you'll notice patterns you might miss otherwise. But, whether written or mental, the practice ends the same way, with conscious release. Take a breath, place your hand on your heart if that feels right, and silently say, I have reflected on this day with honesty. I've learned what it had to teach me, now I release it. The day is complete. I rest, let that be a genuine letting go, not just words. Imagine the day dissolving like smoke, leaving only its lessons behind. Let's walk through this with a real example. Imagine you had a stressful day at work. A project went wrong, your boss was frustrated, and you ended up taking that stress home, speaking sharply to your family, then feeling guilty all evening. During your reflection, you ask the first question. What skillful actions did I take? You remember that when the project first started going wrong, you didn't panic. You gathered the team calmly, identified the problem, and worked together to find a solution. You also remember that before bed, you apologized to your family for your sharp words. You acknowledged your mistake. These were skillful. You recognized them. Second question, what unskillful actions did I take? You spoke harshly to people you love. You carried work stress into your home without pause or transition. You spent the evening replaying the work situation obsessively instead of being present. But instead of just feeling bad about this, you ask why. What were the conditions? You realize you didn't eat lunch. You were running on empty physically and emotionally. You also realize you have a pattern of absorbing others' frustration as if it's your fault, even when it's not. This is insight, not judgment. Third question. What did I learn? You learned that you need to protect your lunch break, even when things get busy. You learned that you need a transition ritual when you come home, maybe a few minutes sitting in the car, or a short walk to separate work from family time. You learned that you're still working on not taking others' emotions personally. These are real lessons, practical wisdom harvested from a difficult day. Now you release it, not by pretending it didn't happen, but by trusting that you've learned what you needed to learn. Tomorrow you can do better because of what today taught you. This is how reflection prevents rumination. Rumination circles without purpose, finding no exit, generating only suffering. Reflection looks clearly, learns and moves forward, and when you practice this each night, something remarkable happens. Regret transforms into wisdom. The day's difficulties become your teachers, and sleep becomes possible because you're no longer lying there, prosecuting yourself. You're lying there having already done the work of honest examination. The day has been reviewed, its lessons have been gathered. Now, you're free to rest. In the early days of the Buddha's Sangha, there was a monk who carried a terrible secret. He'd broken one of the training rules, not catastrophically, but enough that it gnawed at him. Every time he sat to meditate, the memory surfaced. Every time he chanted with his fellow monks, he felt like a fraud. Every night, lying on his mat, the weight pressed down on his chest until he couldn't breathe properly. For weeks he said nothing. He told himself he'd work through it on his own, that confession would be humiliating, that he could simply be more careful going forward. But the secret didn't dissolve with time, it grew heavier. Finally, he approached his teacher after the evening meal. His hands were shaking. "Bhante, I need to confess something. I broke the rule about eating afternoon. I was hungry and weak, and I took food when I shouldn't have. I've been carrying this for 3 weeks. The teacher looked at him with such gentleness that the monk nearly wept. "Thank you for telling me," the teacher said. "The rule was broken 3 weeks ago, but every day you carried it in silence. You broke something else, your own peace. Now you've spoken it, now you're free." The teacher had him recite a simple acknowledgement, prescribed a minor act of restoration, and that was all. The monk walked back to his hut, and for the first time in weeks he could breathe. That night he slept deeply. There's an even more powerful story in the Buddhist texts about a man named Angulimala. Before he met the Buddha, he was a serial killer who wore a garland of his victims' fingers around his neck. 999 people had died by his hand. When he encountered the Buddha walking calmly through the forest where everyone else fled in terror, something broke open in him. He couldn't outrun the Buddha no matter how hard he tried, and when he finally stopped, exhausted and confused, the Buddha simply said, "I have stopped, Angulimala. Now you stop too." Angulimala fell to his knees. In that moment he saw clearly what he'd become. The ocean of suffering he'd created, the weight of it could have crushed him. But the Buddha offered him ordination, taught him that transformation was possible, that acknowledging the depth of his wrongdoing wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of his liberation. Angulimala became a monk. He faced the consequences of his actions. People tried to kill him, and he bore it with equanimity. But he also practiced with such dedication that eventually he became an arahant, fully awakened. His liberation began with acknowledgement, not denial, not justification, not drowning in shame, simply seeing clearly what had done and taking responsibility for becoming different. Maybe your secrets aren't as dramatic. Maybe you're carrying smaller burdens. The lie you told, the promise you broke, the harm you caused in a moment of anger or fear. But the principle is the same. What you refuse to acknowledge owns you. What you bring into the light begins to lose its power. Tonight, you learn what that monk learned, what even Angulimala learned. Confession isn't punishment, it's the doorway to freedom. In Buddhist training, particularly in the Vinaya, the monastic code, there's a practice called Tisarana, which means acknowledgement or confession. Monks and nuns regularly confess their violations of the training rules to each other, not to a higher authority who dispenses forgiveness, but simply to bring their actions into the light. This practice is built on two qualities that might surprise you: hiri and ottappa. Hiri is often translated as moral shame, but not shame in the toxic Western sense that tells you you're fundamentally broken. It's the healthy sense of conscience that says, this action doesn't reflect who I want to be. This isn't aligned with my values. Ottappa is moral dread or fear of wrongdoing. Not neurotic fear, but wise concern for the consequences of unskillful actions. It's what makes you pause before doing something harmful and think, if I do this, it'll cause suffering to others or to myself together. These two qualities are called the guardians of the world in the Buddhist texts. They are what keep societies functional and individuals sane. Without hiri and ottappa, we'd do whatever we wanted without regard for impact. We'd have no internal compass, no sense of moral direction. But here's what's crucial. These are considered wholesome qualities, not neurosis to overcome, but essential aspects of a healthy mind. This is completely different from guilt in the Christian sense. Guilt says, I am bad. Hiri says that action was unskillful, and I have the capacity to do better. Guilt is a fixed identity. Hiri is a dynamic awareness that motivates change in the Vinaya. When monks confess their violations, they're not seeking absolution from an external authority. The Buddha isn't there to forgive them or condemn them. They're simply making their actions known, bringing them out of shadow into clarity. Why does this matter? Because secrets are prisons. When you hold wrongdoing in silence, it ferments. It grows larger in the dark. Your mind returns to it obsessively, trying to justify it, minimize it, or alternatively, magnifying it into proof that you're irredeemable. But when you acknowledge it to yourself, to a teacher, to a trusted friend, or even to the universe, something shifts. The action remains what it was, but it's no longer operating in shadow. You've brought it into awareness, and awareness is where transformation happens. The Buddha taught that confession serves as purification, not magical purification, as if the words themselves erase karma, but psychological purification, the unburdening of what you've been carrying, the relief of honesty, the restoration of integrity between who you are and who you present yourself to be. When you confess an unwholesome action, you're doing several things at once. You're acknowledging reality. You're saying this happened. I can't pretend it didn't. You're taking responsibility. You're saying, I did this, not circumstances, not other people, me. You're clarifying your values. You're saying this action violated something I care about. I see the gap between my values and my behavior, and I want to close that gap. And you're opening the door to change because you can't transform what you won't acknowledge. This isn't about flagellation or endless self-recrimination. The Buddha explicitly warned against that. Remorse is useful only insofar as it motivates change. Beyond that point, it becomes another form of clinging, another way the ego tries to maintain itself through drama. The practice is simple. Acknowledge, learn, release. Acknowledge what you did. Learn from it so you don't repeat it. Release it so you're not carrying it into tomorrow. This is confession as the Buddha taught it. Not punishment but purification. Not condemnation but clarity. Not the end of your worth, but the beginning of your integrity. This practice is done in private, in the quiet of your own heart before sleep. Sit comfortably. Take a few breaths to settle. Then bring to mind something you did today or recently that you're carrying as a burden. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe you lied about something small. Maybe you were cruel in a way you're not proud of. Maybe you broke a commitment to yourself or someone else. Maybe you acted from fear instead of integrity. Whatever it is, let it surface without pushing it away. Now speak it silently or aloud, whichever feels more true for you. Use simple, clear language. I acknowledge that I caused harm. When I spoke harshly to my partner this morning, I acknowledge that I lied to my colleague about why I missed the deadline. I acknowledge that I was unkind to myself today, and that unkindness affected how I treated others. Don't elaborate or justify. Don't explain all the reasons why you did it, or how the other person was partly responsible too. Just state what happened clearly and honestly, then say, I accept responsibility for this action. I understand that it caused suffering. I commit to learning from it and doing better. That's it. That's the confession. You're not confessing to a priest or a guru who will tell you whether you're forgiven. You're confessing to truth itself, to reality, to the part of you that knows what integrity looks like and wants to live in alignment with it. If the wrongdoing was toward another person and it's appropriate to apologize directly, do that tomorrow. But, for now, the practice is internal acknowledgement. As you speak these words, notice what happens in your body. You might feel a softening in your chest, a release of tension you didn't realize you were holding, a sense of relief like setting down something heavy. That relief is real. It's not just emotional, it's physiological. When you stop using energy to hide from yourself, that energy becomes available for rest. After the acknowledgement, take one more breath and consciously release it. Imagine the action dissolving, not erased from history, but released from your grip. You might say, I have acknowledged this. I have learned from it. Now I let it go. Tomorrow I begin again. If you're someone who journals, writing this down can be powerful. There's something about seeing your words on paper that makes the acknowledgement more concrete, more real. But whether spoken or written, the practice ends the same way, with conscious release. Not bypassing the harm, not pretending it didn't matter, but genuinely setting it down after you've faced it. Honestly, there's a reasons confession helps you sleep. When you're carrying unacknowledged wrongdoing, your nervous system knows it. Even when your conscious mind tries to suppress it, there's a subtle background tension, a hypervigilance, a sense that you're hiding something, even from yourself. That tension is incompatible with deep rest. Your body can't fully relax when part of your mind is working overtime to keep secrets, to maintain a false narrative, to defend against the truth you're trying not to see. But when you acknowledge what happened, when you bring it into the light with honesty and take responsibility without drowning in shame, something releases. The energy that was bound up in hiding becomes available for healing. The tension that was keeping you vigilant dissolves. Your nervous system receives the message. We're not running anymore. We're not hiding. We can rest now. This is why the Buddha taught confession as part of regular practice, not to make people feel bad, but to prevent the accumulation of hidden burdens that become unbearable over time. Small acknowledgements prevent large collapses. Regular honesty prevents the buildup of shame. And when you practice this before sleep, you're not just unburdening yourself for tonight. You're establishing a pattern. I don't carry my mistakes into tomorrow. I face them today, learn from them, and move forward lighter. Tomorrow becomes a fresh start, not a continuation of yesterday's burden. And that possibility of renewal, the chance to begin again with clarity, is one of the greatest gifts Buddhist practice offers. Among the Buddha's disciples, there was a monk named Channa who struggled. He was intelligent, capable, but also arrogant and difficult. He quarreled with his fellow monks. He refused correction. He insisted he knew better than everyone else, even as his own suffering became obvious to all who knew him. The other monks grew frustrated with him. Some avoided him. Others tried to force him to change through criticism and isolation. But the Buddha approached Channa differently. Again and again, the Buddha sat with him, listened to his complaints, his justifications, his defensive arguments, never dismissing him, never giving up on him. Even when Channa pushed everyone away, the Buddha saw something the others missed. Channa's arrogance was armor. Underneath was fear. Underneath was a person who didn't know how to be gentle with his own imperfection. Years passed. The Buddha died, and Channa, faced with the reality that his teacher was gone, finally cracked open. He went to the elder Monkananda and confessed, "I've been impossible. I know this. Everyone knows this. I don't know why I can't stop being this way." Ananda, remembering how the Buddha had treated Channa, didn't condemn him. Instead, he said, "The Buddha never stopped believing you could change. He saw your suffering and responded with patience. Now, you must offer yourself that same patience." Something shifted in Channa that day. He began to practice, truly practice for the first time, and eventually, according to the texts, he became fully awakened. His transformation didn't begin when others criticized him harder. It began when he learned to stop criticizing himself. Maybe you know Channa's struggle from the inside. Maybe every night, lying in bed, you replay your failures. The moment you weren't patient enough, smart enough, good enough, the way you disappointed someone or disappointed yourself. Maybe your last thoughts before sleep are everything you did wrong, everything you should have done better. Maybe you treat yourself with a harshness you'd never dream of directing at someone you love. And maybe, like Channa, you've believed that if you're just hard enough on yourself, you'll finally force yourself to change. But here is what the Buddha understood. Cruelty doesn't heal. Not when it comes from others, and especially not when it comes from yourself. Tonight, you're learning to treat yourself the way the Buddha treated Channa. Not with indulgence, but with genuine compassion. The kind that sees clearly and still chooses kindness. Because you can't rest when you're at war with yourself. In the Buddhist practice is one of the 4 Brahmaviharas, the divine abodes of the heart. It's traditionally taught as compassion for the suffering of others. But there's a teaching often attributed to the Buddha that says, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." The spirit of this runs throughout the Buddha's teachings because he understood something essential. You can't genuinely offer compassion to others if you're withholding it from yourself. If you treat yourself with contempt, you'll eventually treat others with contempt, even if you hide it under the performance of kindness. If you can't forgive yourself for being human, you'll find it impossible to truly forgive others. Self-compassion isn't selfishness. It's not saying I'm perfect or I don't need to change. It's saying I'm learning, I'm imperfect, and always will be. And that's not a problem to punish. It's a condition to work with skillfully. In achievement-driven societies, we've developed a belief that self-criticism is productive, that if we're not constantly judging ourselves, maintaining impossible standards, we'll become lazy or complacent. But research and the Buddha's 2,500-year-old teachings tell a different story. Self-criticism activates the threat defense system in your brain. It floods you with cortisol, the stress hormone. It puts your nervous system on high alert, as if you're being attacked, which in a sense, you are. You're attacking yourself. And when your nervous system is in threat mode, several things happen. Your learning capacity decreases, your creativity shuts down, your ability to see options narrows, and your body cannot rest. You literally cannot sleep deeply when you're treating yourself as the enemy. The Buddha taught the middle way, the path between extremes. Applied to self-relationship, this means avoiding 2 traps. The first trap is self-indulgence. Excusing harmful behavior, avoiding responsibility, pretending you're fine when you're actually causing damage. This isn't compassion, it's denial. The second trap is self-punishment. Treating yourself with cruelty, holding yourself to impossible standards, believing that suffering is what you deserve. This isn't discipline, it's violence. The middle way is clear-eyed honesty combined with genuine care. It's saying, "I see where I fell short today. I acknowledge the harm I caused, and I'm committed to learning and growing, but I'm not going to torture myself about being imperfect. That torture doesn't help anyone. This is what the Buddha modeled with Channa and countless others. He saw their struggles clearly, didn't minimize them, didn't pretend they weren't problems, but he also didn't abandon them or crush them with judgment. He held them with patience while they learned. And that's what you're learning to do for yourself tonight. To hold yourself with patience while you learn. To recognize that you're a work in progress. And that's exactly as it should be. Because change happens through safety, not threat. Growth happens through encouragement, not punishment. You become who you're capable of being, not by hating who you are, but by caring for yourself enough to want to grow. Self-criticism before sleep is particularly harmful because it programs your subconscious with messages of unworthiness, just as you're entering the state where those messages sink deepest. Your last thoughts before sleep matter. They shape the quality of your rest and the lens through which you'll see tomorrow. If your last thoughts are "I'm not good enough, I failed again," you're going to sleep carrying those as truth. You're going to wake up already defeated. But if your last thoughts are "I'm learning, I'm doing my best, tomorrow I'll try again," you're going to sleep held by possibility instead of crushed by judgment. And that changes everything. This practice is simple, but it requires genuine presence. It won't work if you just mouth the words while your mind continues its attack. You have to mean it, even if meaning it feels awkward at first. Sit comfortably or lie down in bed. Take a few breaths to settle. Now, place your hand on your heart. Feel the warmth of your palm against your chest. Feel your heartbeat if you can. This physical gesture matters. It activates the care system in your nervous system, the same system that activates when you comfort a child or hold a loved one. With your hand on your heart, begin speaking to yourself the way you did speak to someone you genuinely care about, who's having a hard time. Not fake positivity, not dismissiveness, but real, grounded kindness that says, "This is hard. You're struggling and that's okay. You're still worthy of care." You might use phrases like these, either silently or whispered aloud. Say them slowly, let them land. "I am learning." You're not finished learning. You're in process. Today was part of the curriculum, even the hard parts. May I be patient with myself. Feel the truth of this. You're asking for the same patience. The Buddha offered Channa, the patience to keep growing without demanding instant perfection. I did my best with what I knew today. This one can be hard to say, especially if you're someone who always believes you could have done more, but it's true. In each moment you made choices based on what you knew, what you were capable of, what resources you had available. Tomorrow you'll know more. Tomorrow you'll do differently, but today you did what you could. May I accept myself as I am, even as I work to grow. This is the middle way applied directly. Acceptance and growth aren't opposites. You can accept where you are right now while still moving toward where you want to be. I am worthy of rest. This might be the hardest one to believe, especially if you didn't accomplish everything you wanted today. But rest isn't a reward for productivity. It's a basic need, like water or air. You don't have to earn it. As you speak these phrases, keep your hand on your heart. Breathe slowly and deeply. Imagine you're talking to a younger version of yourself, or to a dear friend, or to a small child who's afraid they're not good enough. What tone would you use? Gentle, warm, steady. That's the tone. You're offering yourself now. You might find emotions rising: sadness, grief, relief. That's okay. Let them come. They're signs that you've been harsh with yourself for a long time, and this gentleness feels unfamiliar. Stay with it. Keep your hand on your heart. Keep breathing. Keep offering yourself the compassion you've been withholding. You can create your own phrases too, whatever feels true and needed. I forgive myself for not being perfect. I'm allowed to make mistakes and still be worthy of love. I'm doing the best I can, and that's enough. The specific words matter less than the quality of presence you bring to them. Are you really offering yourself care or going through the motions while your inner critic waits to pounce again? If the critic interrupts, and it probably will, don't fight it, just notice it. Then gently return to your hand on your heart, your breath, your phrases of care. This is practice. It gets easier with repetition. Something remarkable happens when you practice self-compassion regularly before sleep. Research shows that people who treat themselves with kindness experience less anxiety, less depression, better emotional resilience, and yes, better sleep quality. But the Buddha knew this 500 years before the research confirmed it. When you stop fighting yourself, your nervous system can finally stand down. The constant vigilance, the hyper-awareness of every flaw, the endless prosecution, it all requires enormous energy. That energy, when released, becomes available for rest, for healing, for actual growth instead of the performance of growth. Students often ask, won't self-compassion make me complacent? Won't I stop trying to improve if I'm too nice to myself? The research and thousands of years of Buddhist practice says the opposite is true. Self-criticism keeps you stuck. It makes you defensive, rigid, afraid to try new things, because failure feels like confirmation that you're worthless. Self-compassion frees you to actually change, because when you know you're held with care regardless of outcome, you can take risks, you can experiment, you can fail and learn, instead of fail and collapse. Think about how you learn best, from a teacher who shames you for every mistake, or from a teacher who acknowledges your struggles while believing in your capacity to grow. You already know the answer. Now, you're learning to be that second kind of teacher to yourself. When you lie down tonight after practicing self-compassion, notice how your body feels. Notice if there's more softness in your chest, more ease in your breath, more possibility of actually releasing into sleep instead of gripping against it. Notice if tomorrow morning feels different, not magically fixed, but perhaps less heavy. Perhaps you wake up willing to try again instead of already defeated. This is what changes when you stop fighting yourself. Rest becomes possible. Not because all your problems are solved, but because you're no longer adding the extra layer of self-attack on top of whatever challenges you're facing. The Buddha offered Channa patience for years before Channa could accept it. It might take time for you too. That's okay. The practice is here waiting every night for as long as you need it. You've placed your hand on your heart. You've offered yourself the care you deserve. You've chosen kindness over cruelty, even in the privacy of your own mind. That choice is everything. There's a story rarely told about a lay practitioner in ancient India who came to visit the Buddha. She was an ordinary woman, not a nun, not a scholar, just someone trying to live with awareness in the midst of daily life. She approached the Buddha with her head bowed, embarrassed to take up his time. "Venerable sir," she said, "I have nothing to offer you. I haven't achieved any great meditation states, I haven't memorized the teachings. I'm just trying to be kind in small ways to my family, to strangers, to myself." The Buddha smiled. "Tell me about these small ways," he said. She hesitated, then began. "Yesterday, I saw a child crying in the market and I stopped to help her find her mother. This morning I gave food to a beggar, even though I don't have much myself. Last week, when my husband was angry with me, I chose not to respond with anger back. As she spoke, she kept minimizing each action. These are nothing really. Anyone would do the same." The Buddha stopped her gently. "These are not nothing. These are kusala, wholesome actions that reduce suffering in the world. When you dismiss them, you dishonor the good you've cultivated. When you celebrate them, you strengthen your capacity to do more good tomorrow." He looked at her with great warmth. "Take joy in your goodness, not pride that compares yourself to others, but genuine appreciation for the seeds of wisdom. Your planting this joy, mudita, is itself a practice. It trains your mind to notice beauty, rather than only seeing failures." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She'd never thought she had permission to feel good about her small kindnesses. Shed believed that spiritual people were supposed to be humble, which Shed confused with self-dismissal. But the Buddha was teaching her something different. There's a vast difference between arrogance and acknowledgement, between ego inflation and honest recognition of your own goodness. Maybe you're like that woman. Maybe you too have learned to dismiss everything good you do, to wave it away as nothing special or what anyone would do. Maybe when someone compliments you, you deflect immediately. Maybe at night, instead of remembering the moment you were patient or kind, you only catalogue your failures. Tonight you're learning what the Buddha taught that woman, that celebrating your goodness isn't vanity. It's wisdom. It's training your mind to see what's working so you can create more of it, because you can't grow what you won't acknowledge. Mudita is the third of the 4 Brahmaviharas, the divine abodes of the heart that the Buddha taught as essential practices. The 4 are metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, sympathetic joy, and upekkha, equanimity. Together, they form a complete approach to cultivating a heart that's both strong and tender. Mudita is often translated as sympathetic joy or appreciative joy. Traditionally, it's taught as the practice of rejoicing in others' happiness and good fortune. When someone succeeds, you feel genuine gladness for them rather than envy. When someone experiences joy, you celebrate with them rather than diminishing it. But mudita also includes the capacity to rejoice in your own wholesome actions, to recognize when you've done something skillful and allow yourself to feel genuinely good about it. This isn't pride. Pride is comparative. It says I'm better than you. Pride inflates the ego and creates separation. Mudita is simply acknowledgement. It says this was good, this aligned with wisdom, I'm glad I did this. It doesn't compare, doesn't compete, doesn't need to be special or impressive. In the Pali texts, the Buddha regularly encouraged his students to recognize their kusala, their wholesome actions, thoughts, and intentions. He taught that what you attend to grows. If you only notice your failures, you train your mind to see yourself as fundamentally flawed. But if you also notice your successes, even tiny ones, you train your mind to see your capacity for goodness. This isn't about becoming delusional or avoiding necessary self-reflection. You've already practiced that in the earlier rituals, honest examination of both skillful and unskillful actions. Mudita comes after that honesty. It's the practice of allowing yourself to actually feel good about the good you've done, instead of immediately moving on to the next criticism. Why do we resist this? Why is it so hard for many of us to celebrate our own goodness? Sometimes it's cultural conditioning. We've been taught that talking about our accomplishments is boastful, so we've overcorrected, and now we can't even privately acknowledge our own growth. Sometimes it's fear. If we let ourselves feel good about who we're becoming, we might stop trying to improve. We might become complacent. Sometimes it's unworthiness. Deep down, we don't believe we deserve to feel good about ourselves. We've internalized the message that we're fundamentally not enough, so any evidence to the contrary must be dismissed. But the Buddha taught something radically different. He taught that recognizing your wholesome actions isn't optional. It's essential to the path. In the Vitakkasanthana Sutta, he speaks about replacing unwholesome thoughts with wholesome ones. And one way to do this is to consciously recall and rejoice in your past good actions, to let the warmth of remembering your kindness, your patience, your effort counteract the cold criticism that dominates so much mental space. This practice of mudita before sleep serves a specific purpose. It ensures you're not going to bed marinating in negativity. It creates balance. Yes, you've examined your mistakes and learned from them, but you've also acknowledged your victories, however small, and allowed yourself to feel the joy of living in alignment with your values. The Buddha knew that the mind gravitates toward negativity. It's a survival mechanism, always scanning for threats and problems. Mudita is the conscious practice of retraining that gravitational pull of teaching your mind that there's goodness worth celebrating, joy worth feeling, beauty worth noticing. And when you practice this regularly, something shifts. You stop living in constant deficit, always aware of how you're falling short. You start living with a more balanced view. Yes, you're learning and growing, and yes, you're also already manifesting goodness in ways that matter. Both can be true at once. Lie down or sit comfortably in bed. Take a few breaths to settle into the present moment. Now bring your attention to today, not the whole day, just today, and ask yourself this simple question: what good did I do? Let moments arise naturally. Don't force it. Don't make a list you're obligated to complete. Just notice what surfaces when you genuinely ask the question with openness and curiosity. Maybe you woke up when the alarm went off, instead of hitting snooze repeatedly. That took discipline. That was you choosing to honor your commitments. Maybe you ate something nourishing instead of just grabbing whatever was convenient. That was you caring for your body. Maybe you smiled at the cashier at the store. That tiny moment of warmth might have been the only kindness that person received all day. Maybe you took a breath before responding to someone who irritated you. That pause was wisdom. That was you choosing awareness over reactivity. Maybe you chose to drink water instead of another coffee. Maybe you called a friend who was struggling. Maybe you did the dishes even though you were tired. Maybe you were patient with yourself when you made a mistake. These don't have to be impressive. They don't have to be worthy of a medal or recognition. They just have to be true moments where you chose something wholesome over something harmful, or where you manifested kindness, wisdom, or care. As each moment comes to mind, don't just catalog it and move on. Actually pause with it. Let yourself feel it. Place your hand on your chest if that helps. As you remember that moment of goodness, notice if there's any warmth that arises in your heart, any softness, any quiet satisfaction. That's mudita. That's the joy of recognizing your own alignment with wisdom. You might silently say, "I'm glad I did that. That was good. That mattered." Let yourself really receive that acknowledgement. Don't diminish it with, "but it wasn't much," or "anyone would have done the same." Just let it be good. Just let it count. If resistance comes up, if that voice says, "This is silly," or "you don't deserve to feel good about yourself," notice that voice. Thank it for trying to keep you humble, and then gently return to the practice of celebrating your goodness anyway. After you've acknowledged several of your own wholesome actions, you can expand the practice. Think about good things others did today. Maybe your partner made dinner. Maybe a coworker helped you with something. Maybe a stranger held the door. Maybe someone you've never met created something beautiful that you encountered today, a song, a piece of writing, a work of art. Let yourself feel genuine appreciation for their goodness too. I'm glad they did that. That was beautiful, that added light to the world. This practice of extending mudita to others helps prevent your joy from becoming self-centered. You're not celebrating yourself in isolation. You're celebrating the presence of goodness wherever it appears, including in you. As you lie there, having reviewed these moments of wholesome action, yours and others, notice how your body feels. Is there more ease, more softness, more warmth? This is what it feels like to go to bed with appreciation instead of criticism, with acknowledgement instead of dismissal, with joy instead of judgment. Let that warmth be what you carry into sleep. There's something powerful that happens neurologically when you practice mudita before sleep. Your brain processes and consolidates memories during sleep, particularly during REM stages when you dream. The emotional tone you bring into sleep influences this processing. If you go to bed ruminating on failures and drowning in self-criticism, your brain spends the night reinforcing those neural pathways. Your dreams may be anxious or distressing. You wake up already braced for inadequacy, but if you go to bed having consciously recalled moments of goodness, having allowed yourself to feel genuine appreciation for your own and others' wholesome actions, You're priming your brain differently. You're telling your nervous system, there is goodness here, there is beauty, there are things worth celebrating. This doesn't erase the difficult parts of your day, it creates balance. It reminds your brain that life isn't only struggle, it's also small victories, tiny kindnesses, moments of alignment with your deepest values. Research on positive psychology confirms what the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. What you focus on before sleep affects sleep quality, dream content, and morning mood. People who practice gratitude or positive reflection before bed fall asleep faster, sleep more deeply, and wake feeling more refreshed than those who ruminate on problems. This isn't toxic positivity or denying reality. It's conscious cultivation of balance. It's training your attention to notice what's working alongside what needs work. And when you wake tomorrow morning, you'll likely notice something subtle but significant. You're a little more willing to try, a little more confident that you're capable of goodness, a little less defeated before the day has even begun. Because you went to sleep knowing that today, despite everything, you chose kindness somewhere. You manifested patience somewhere. You created a little more light than darkness. And if you could do it today, you can do it tomorrow. That knowledge, held gently in your heart as you drift into sleep, becomes the ground from which tomorrow's goodness grows. You've celebrated your own wholesome actions. You've rejoiced in the goodness you witnessed around you. You've allowed warmth instead of criticism to be your final waking companion. That's mudita. In the early days of the Buddha's teaching, a group of monks went into a dense forest to practice meditation during the rainy season retreat. The forest was remote, perfect for solitude and deep practice, but something was wrong. At night, strange sounds filled the darkness. Branches cracked without wind. Shadows moved where nothing should have been. Some monks reported seeing terrifying figures, spirits of the forest, they said, angry at the intrusion. Fear spread through the group. No one could meditate. No one could sleep. They were exhausted, jumping at every sound, their nervous systems locked in constant vigilance. After weeks of this, they returned to the Buddha and explained what had happened. They asked to be sent somewhere else to complete their retreat. The Buddha listened carefully. Then, he taught them something that would become one of the most important practices in all of Buddhism. The Metta Sutta, the discourse on loving kindness. He instructed them to return to the same forest, but this time, before entering, they were to fill their hearts with metta, boundless loving kindness toward all beings, including whatever dwelled in that forest. The monks were uncertain, but they trusted their teacher. They went back, and this time everything changed. As they walked into the forest radiating metta, the atmosphere shifted, the hostile presence dissipated. According to the texts, the forest spirits themselves were moved by the monks' goodwill and became protectors rather than tormentors. But whether you believe in forest spirits or not, the psychological truth is undeniable. When the monks changed their internal state from fear to loving kindness, their entire experience transformed. They could practice. They could sleep. What had been a place of terror became a place of profound peace. Maybe you don't live in a haunted forest, but maybe you lie down each night in a haunted mind. Maybe the voices that keep you awake aren't external spirits, but internal ones. Anxiety about tomorrow, anger about today, worry about people you love, resentment toward people who've hurt you. Tonight, you're learning what those monks learned. The antidote to inner chaos isn't more fear, it's not stronger defenses. The antidote is metta, loving kindness so vast it disarms the threat, so genuine it transforms the atmosphere of your own consciousness. When you fill your heart with metta before sleep, you're not pretending problems don't exist. You're changing the field in which those problems arise. The monks went back to that forest and practiced deeply. Tonight, you return to your own inner forest and learn to meet whatever lives there with the same boundless kindness. The Metta Sutta is one of the Buddha's most beloved teachings, found in the Sutta Nipata of the Pali Canon. It's been chanted by monks and lay people for over 2,000 years. The discourse begins. Whatever living beings there may be, feeble or strong, tall, medium or short, seen or unseen, dwelling far or near, born or coming to birth, may all beings be happy. This is metta in its fullest expression, goodwill extended to all life without exception, without boundary, without condition. Why did the Buddha prescribe metta specifically before sleep? Because sleep requires surrender, and you cannot surrender when you feel unsafe. Throughout the day, you've likely encountered difficulties, people who challenged you, situations that frustrated you, moments where you felt threatened. If you carry that defensiveness into bed, your nervous system stays activated. Some part of you remains on guard, unable to fully let go. Metta practice systematically dismantles that defensiveness, not by denying real threats, but by cultivating a mind state so spacious and kind that even difficult people and situations can be held with some measure of goodwill. In the Visuddhimagga, the Path of Purification, an ancient Buddhist text, 11 benefits of metta practice are listed. The first one sleeps in comfort. The Buddha knew this experientially. A heart filled with metta creates the internal conditions for deep rest. The traditional practice involves sending metta in 4 directions: to yourself, to loved ones, to neutral people, and to difficult people, and finally extending it boundlessly to all beings. This isn't arbitrary. It's systematic training in expanding your capacity for goodwill, starting where it's easiest and gradually moving toward where it's most challenging. You begin with yourself, because if you can't genuinely wish yourself well, your metta toward others will be hollow. You move to loved ones, because here metta flows naturally, which strengthens the feeling. You include neutral people to break the habit of only caring about those in your immediate circle. And finally, you let metta expand without limit to all beings everywhere, known and unknown, human and non-human, suffering and joyful. This final expansion is what makes metta so transformative for sleep. When you extend goodwill to all beings, your personal worries naturally diminish in scale. You remember, you're part of something vast. Your problems, while real, are held within a much larger context, and somehow that perspective brings relief. Metta is also specifically taught as an antidote to anger and fear, the 2 emotional states most likely to keep you awake at night. When anger is present, metta doesn't suppress it. It transforms the soil in which anger grows. When you genuinely wish someone well, the grip of resentment loosens. When fear is present, metta creates safety through connection. When you remember that you're part of a web of life, all seeking the same fundamental things, safety, peace, freedom from suffering, fear's isolation dissolves. The Buddha taught metta not as a nice sentiment, but as a powerful practice that literally changes your mind's relationship to reality. This practice has 5 stages. Take your time with each one. Even doing just the first stage is profoundly valuable. Lie down or sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths to settle your awareness. Begin by bringing your attention to yourself, not your personality or your story, just the simple awareness of being alive in this moment. Place your hand on your heart if that helps you connect. Now, offer yourself these phrases either silently or whispered aloud. Say them slowly with intention. May I be safe. Feel what this means. Safe from harm, from danger, from the violence of your own self-criticism. May I be peaceful, not forcing peace, but inviting it. Opening to the possibility that peace is available right now. May I be healthy. Physical health, mental health, the wellness of body and mind working together. May I be free from suffering, released from unnecessary suffering, from the suffering you create through clinging and resistance. Repeat these phrases several times, 3 times at minimum, but you can continue longer if it feels nourishing. As you speak these words to yourself, notice what happens in your body. Do you feel warmth, softening, resistance? It's common to feel resistance when you first practice metta toward yourself. A voice might say, "I don't deserve this," or "This feels fake." If that happens, don't fight the resistance. Just acknowledge it and gently turn to the phrases, offering them anyway. The practice works not because you feel perfect loving kindness immediately, but because you're training your mind in a new direction. Now, bring to mind someone you care about deeply, someone whose happiness genuinely matters to you. Visualize them gently. You don't need a perfectly clear image, just a sense of their presence. Offer them the same phrases. May you be safe. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you be free from suffering. Let yourself feel the warmth of genuinely wishing them well. This is metta in its most natural form. Stay with this person for several repetitions. Let the feeling deepen. Now, think of someone you encounter regularly but don't have strong feelings about. The person who delivers your mail, a neighbor you wave to but don't really know. This person wants to be happy just like you. They struggle, they hope, they fear. Offer them the same phrases. May you be safe, may you be peaceful, may you be healthy, may you be free from suffering. This stage might feel strange. You might wonder why. You're spending energy on someone who doesn't affect your life. But that's the point. You're training your heart to extend goodwill beyond your immediate circle. This next stage is optional before sleep, especially when you're just beginning, as it can be activating. But if you feel ready, bring to mind someone you're having difficulty with. Not your worst enemy. Start small. Someone who irritated you today. You don't have to like this person. You're simply acknowledging that they too are a being who wants to be happy and free from suffering. Offer them the phrases, may you be safe, may you be peaceful, may you be healthy, may you be free from suffering. If this feels impossible, you can modify it. May you find peace, may you be free from whatever causes you to cause harm. You're doing this to free yourself from the prison of resentment that ruins your own sleep. If it's too much tonight, skip this stage. There's no failure here. Finally, let your awareness expand beyond individuals to the vastness of all life. Imagine your metta radiating outward like light from your heart, first filling your room, then your home, then your neighborhood, your city, your country, the entire planet. Extend it to all beings, human and animal, those suffering and those at ease, those you'll meet and those you'll never know. You might use these words. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from suffering. Or the traditional words from the Metta Sutta. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings be at ease. As you expand your metta this wide, something remarkable happens. Your personal concerns naturally recede, not because they don't matter, but because you've remembered the bigger picture. You're part of an enormous web of life, all interconnected, all seeking the same fundamental things. Your worry about tomorrow is still real, but it's held within the context of billions of beings, all navigating their own challenges. And somehow that context brings perspective, brings relief. Stay here as long as you like, resting in this boundless goodwill. When you're ready, take one final breath and let the practice settle. When you practice metta before sleep, you're doing something profound to your nervous system. All day, you've likely been in some degree of self-centered anxiety, worrying about your problems, your future, your survival. This keeps your nervous system in sympathetic activation, the fight-or-flight state. That's incompatible with deep rest. Metta shifts you into parasympathetic activation, the rest digest state. When you extend genuine goodwill, especially when you expand it beyond yourself to include all beings, you're signaling to your body, we're safe, we're connected, we don't have to defend against the world. This isn't spiritual bypassing. Real threats may still exist, but metta changes your relationship to those threats from frantic reactivity to grounded response. Research on loving-kindness meditation confirms what Buddhist practitioners have known for millennia. Regular metta practice reduces anxiety, decreases inflammation, improves sleep quality, and increases feelings of social connection and safety. But beyond the measurable benefits, there's something harder to quantify. When you go to sleep having just wished the entire universe well, you're held differently. You're not collapsing into unconsciousness because you can't take any more. You're releasing into rest because you've already connected to something vast enough to hold you. You've remembered that you're not alone, fighting a hostile world. You're part of an intricate web of beings, all struggling together, all worthy of care, including you. And when you remember that, truly feel it in your bones, sleep comes not as an escape, but as trust. Trust that you can let go. Trust that the universe will hold you while you rest. Trust that tomorrow you'll wake and try again, held by the same boundless goodwill you've just practiced. The monks returned to that forest filled with metta, and the terror dissolved. You return to your own inner landscape tonight with the same practice, and whatever haunts you there loses its power. Not because you've defeated it, but because you've transformed the ground on which it stands. Where there was fear, there's now loving kindness. Where there was isolation, there's now connection. Where there was grasping, there's now release. You've sent light before sleep to yourself, to those you love, to strangers, perhaps even to those who've hurt you, and finally, to all beings everywhere. That light doesn't go out when you close your eyes. It carries you through the night, a quiet companion in the darkness, reminding you that you're held by something far greater than your individual worry. Sleep well in that knowing. There's a story told about a monk practicing in the mountains of Sri Lanka centuries ago. He'd been meditating for months, following the Buddha's instructions from the Satipatthana Sutta, establishing mindfulness by observing body, feelings, mind and mental objects. But every evening as darkness gathered, his practice fell apart. The moment he tried to rest, his mind filled with thoughts, not just ordinary thoughts, but torrents of them. Memories from his life before ordination, worries about his practice, judgments about other monks, plans for tomorrow, regrets about yesterday. Night after night, he lay awake, trying desperately to stop the thoughts. He'd push them away, but they'd return stronger. He'd try to replace them with something peaceful, but within minutes the flood would begin again. Exhausted, he sought guidance from his teacher Bhante. The young monk said, "I cannot stop my thoughts at night, they consume me. How do I make them go away?" The teacher smiled gently. "Come with me," he said. They walked to a clearing where the sky opened wide above them. It was late afternoon, and clouds were moving across the expanse, some white and fluffy, some dark and heavy, some thin wisps barely visible. "Watch the clouds," the teacher said. They stood in silence. The young monk watched as clouds drifted by, some fast, some slow, each one different, each one temporary. After a long while, the teacher asked, "Did you have to push the clouds away?" "No, Bhante." "Did any clouds stay forever?" "No, Bhante. They all passed." The teacher nodded. "Your thoughts are like these clouds. They arise. They move through the vast sky of your awareness, and they dissolve. You don't need to push them away. You only need to watch them pass." He placed his hand on the young monk's shoulder. "The problem isn't that you have thoughts at night. The problem is that you believe you must engage with every thought that arises. You grab onto each cloud as it passes, and in that grabbing you create suffering. So I just watch, yes," the teacher said. "When a thought arises, silently note it thinking, and let it pass like a cloud. Don't suppress it, but don't follow it either. Just acknowledge its presence and return your attention to awareness itself." That night, the young monk tried this approach. When thoughts came, he didn't fight them. He simply noted. Planning, remembering, worrying. And slowly he noticed something remarkable. The thoughts still arose, but they no longer had power over him. They moved through his awareness like clouds through sky. For the first time in months, he slept deeply. The practice comes directly from the Buddha's teaching in the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness. It's found in the Majjhima Nikaya and is considered one of the most important meditation instructions the Buddha ever gave. The Buddha teaches 4 foundations of mindfulness: body, feelings, mind and mental objects. The third foundation, mindfulness of mind, is about observing mental states as they arise and pass away. The Buddha instructs, when the mind has desire, one knows the mind has desire. When the mind is without desire, one knows the mind is without desire. When the mind is angry, one knows the mind is angry. This instruction contains profound wisdom. You observe what's present without adding to it, without trying to change it, without identifying with it. The noting practice, systematized by the Burmese meditation master Mahasi Sayadaw, applies this principle to thoughts and mental states. When a thought arises, you note it with a soft mental label, then return to your anchor of awareness. This practice is radically different from thought suppression. Suppression says, this thought shouldn't be here. I need to get rid of it. But suppression doesn't work. Research shows it makes thoughts more persistent. When you try not to think about something, your mind becomes hypervigilant for it. Noting practice acknowledges the thought without resistance and without engagement. It says, this thought is here. I see it. I'm not going to push it away, but I'm also not going to follow it. Simply going to note its presence and let it be. This changes everything. When you stop fighting your thoughts, they lose their urgency. When you stop feeding them with attention, they naturally dissolve. The Buddha taught that thoughts are mental events, temporary formations that arise based on conditions and pass away when those conditions change. They're not truth, not commands, not predictions. When you believe your thoughts are truth, you're trapped. When you recognize them as temporary events, you're free to let them pass. This is crucial before sleep. The mind in transition to sleep becomes more porous, more suggestible. Thoughts that arise can feel more real, more urgent than they are. You might have a passing worry about tomorrow, and within seconds, your mind has constructed an entire disaster scenario. These thoughts aren't predictions. They're just the mind generating thoughts, especially when tired. Noting practice gives you a way to relate to thoughts that doesn't involve either suppressing them or believing them. It's the middle path, neither clinging nor aversion. When you practice this regularly, something develops. You begin to trust that thoughts will pass on their own. You stop needing to control every mental movement. That trust allows deep rest. Lie down in bed or sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Take 3 slow breaths. Bring your attention to your breath, not controlling it, just noticing it. The gentle rise and fall of your chest, this is your anchor. Whenever you've been carried away by a thought, you'll return here. As you rest with the breath, thoughts will arise. They might come immediately or after moments of calm. Either way, they'll come. That's just what minds do. Minds think, attention drifts. When you notice a thought has appeared, silently note it. If it's a worry about tomorrow, whisper internally. Worrying. If it's planning, note. Planning. If it's remembering, note. Remembering. If it's judging yourself, note. Judging. Keep the label simple. You're not analyzing the content. You're simply acknowledging what's present. The noting should be gentle, almost like a whisper, not harsh. You're just making contact with what's present, naming it softly, letting it be. After you've noted the thought, return your attention to your breath, back to the sense of breathing. Don't try to force the thought away, don't follow it. Just note it, and return. The thought might dissolve immediately, or it might linger. All of that is fine. If the same thought keeps returning, note it each time. Worrying. Don't get frustrated. Just keep noting. Keep returning to breath. Eventually, you'll notice something shift. The thoughts don't grip as tightly. They arise, linger briefly, then fade like smoke. You're not making them disappear through force. You're allowing them to follow their natural course, arising and passing away. As you continue, you might notice spaces opening up between thoughts, brief moments of stillness. These spaces are the sky between the clouds. Rest in those spaces when they appear. When the next thought arises, note it and return to breath. Continue this practice for as long as feels right, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or until you drift into sleep. You're lying in bed following your breath, and suddenly a thought arises. Tomorrow I have that presentation at work. What if I forget what I'm supposed to say immediately? Your body tenses. Your heart rate increases. The worry has hooked you. And now your mind spins out scenarios, fumbling in front of everyone, looking incompetent, damaging your reputation. But you've been practicing noting. Instead of following that spiral, you catch yourself, you note, worrying, just those 2 words, soft and kind. Then you return to your breath, inhale, exhale. The worry might not disappear immediately. It might assert itself. But I need to review my notes. You note, planning, return to breath. But what if worrying, return to breath? Each time you note and return, you're not engaging with the content. You're not debating whether the worry is justified. You're simply acknowledging worry and choosing not to feed it. And here is what happens. Without your engagement, the thought begins to lose energy. It's like a fire that needs fuel. When you stop adding wood, the fire dies down. After a few cycles, you might notice the presentation worry has faded into the background. Maybe it's still there, a faint whisper, but it's no longer dominating your awareness. This is the spaciousness that emerges. You're still aware the presentation exists. You're not in denial, but you're not imprisoned by worry either. There's space around it now, space to breathe, space to rest. The worry might return. That's okay, you'll note it again. Worrying, and return to breath. With each cycle, you're training your mind in a new pattern. Not the pattern of getting hooked by every thought, but the pattern of acknowledging thoughts and letting them be. What you're learning is that you don't have to solve every problem before you sleep. You don't have to have all the answers before you can rest. You can acknowledge the presentation exists. You can acknowledge you're nervous. And you can still choose to let that thought be there without letting it control your night. Tomorrow, when you're awake and alert, you can review your notes. You can practice. But right now, at night, when your thinking mind is tired, you don't have to engage. You can simply note worrying, and return to the anchor of your breath. That distinction between acknowledging thoughts and being controlled by them transforms sleepless nights into restful ones. Not because the problems have disappeared, but because you've changed your relationship to thinking about them. The clouds pass. The sky remains. You are the sky, not the clouds. That's what you're learning tonight. On the night of his enlightenment, the Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree. He'd tried everything before this moment, years of extreme asceticism that nearly killed him, philosophical study with the greatest teachers of his time, meditative absorptions that brought temporary peace but not lasting liberation. Nothing had worked. Nothing had penetrated the mystery of suffering. And then, as he settled into meditation that final night, he did something remarkably simple. He turned his attention to his breath, not controlling it, not manipulating it, not making it deeper or slower or more spiritual, just watching it exactly as it was. Breath coming in, breath going out. With each breath, his mind grew steadier. With each breath, the clinging loosened. With each breath, he moved deeper into the present moment, the only moment where truth reveals itself. And in that steady attention to something as ordinary as breathing, the extraordinary happened. He saw through the illusion of a separate self. He understood the nature of suffering and the end of suffering. He awakened. Years later, after decades of teaching, the Buddha would say that of all the meditation practices he'd discovered, mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati in Pali, was supreme. Not because breath is mystical or special, but because it's always here, always available, always arising and passing moment by moment, teaching the fundamental truth of impermanence if you're willing to pay attention. In the Anapanasati Sutta, found in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha gives detailed instructions on this practice. He describes 16 stages of refinement, each one deepening concentration and insight. He taught this practice to monks and nuns, to lay people, to anyone who wanted to understand the nature of mind and reality. He taught it not as theory, but as a path, a direct experience anyone could verify for themselves. Why breath? Because unlike thoughts which can spiral into fantasy, or emotions which can overwhelm, or external objects which change and disappear, the breath is neutral, consistent, always present. As long as you're alive, you're breathing, and that makes breath the most reliable anchor you have for training attention. The Buddha knew something else. Breath is intimately connected to your mental state. When you're anxious, your breath becomes shallow and rapid. When you're calm, it deepens and slows. When you're angry, it becomes tight. When you're peaceful, it flows freely. This connection runs both ways. Your mental state affects your breath, and your breath affects your mental state. Which means that by simply observing your breath with steady attention, you're creating conditions for calm to arise naturally, not forcing it, not manufacturing it, just allowing it to emerge from the simple act of paying attention. Tonight, you're learning what the Buddha discovered under that tree, that the ordinary act of breathing, when met with full awareness, becomes a doorway to peace. Not because breath is magic, but because attention itself, when cultivated with patience and kindness, transforms everything it touches. The Anapanasati Sutta describes 16 stages of mindfulness of breathing, organized into 4 tetrads of 4 stages each. The first tetrad focuses on the body experiencing the whole breath, calming the bodily formation. The second on feelings, experiencing joy, experiencing happiness, experiencing mental formation. The third on mind, experiencing the mind, gladdening the mind, concentrating the mind. The fourth on mental objects, contemplating impermanence, fading away, cessation, relinquishment. These 16 stages represent a complete path from basic breath awareness to profound insight into the nature of reality. But for sleep practice, you don't need all 16 stages. You need the foundation, the first tetrad, stages 1 through 4, which focus on the body and breath. These stages are knowing when you're breathing in long or short, knowing when you're breathing out long or short, experiencing the whole body breathing, and calming the bodily formation. In simple terms, you're learning to be fully present with the physical sensation of breathing, noticing its natural rhythm, and allowing that attention to calm your entire system. Why does this work? Physiologically, focused attention on breath activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the stand-gereist response that counteracts stress. When you bring your full awareness to breathing, your body receives a signal. We're safe enough to pay attention to this simple thing, which means we're safe enough to relax. Psychologically, breath serves as an anchor that interrupts rumination. Your mind can't simultaneously worry about tomorrow and fully experience the sensation of breathing right now. The two don't coexist. So every moment you return your attention to breath is a moment you're not caught in anxious thought. Spiritually, breath connects you to the present moment, which is the only moment that exists. Past is memory, future is imagination, but breath is now. And when you're fully here in this breath, you've stepped out of the time-bound mind that creates most suffering. The Buddha taught this practice with remarkable precision, but also with gentleness. He never said force your breath or make it perfect as it is. Long breath, no it's long. Short breath, no it's short. Rough breath, no it's rough. Smooth breath, no it's smooth. No judgment about how it should be, just clear knowing of how it is. This radical acceptance of breath, as it naturally occurs, creates a template for relating to all experience. Meeting what's here, with awareness instead of resistance, with curiosity instead of control. And when you bring this quality of attention to your breath before sleep, you're training your mind in letting go. Because every exhale is a release. Every inhale is a fresh beginning, over and over, all night long. Even as you sleep, your breath continues this cycle of releasing and receiving. The Buddha called this practice the path to enlightenment, but it's also the path to a good night's sleep. Because when your attention rests steadily on the simple truth of breathing, the mind that was scattered begins to gather, the body that was tense begins to soften, and the possibility of rest becomes available. You can practice this sitting up or lying down. If you're sitting, sit comfortably on the edge of your bed with your spine naturally upright, not rigid. If you're lying down, you can lie on your back with arms at your sides, or use the lion's posture lying on your right side, right hand supporting your head, left arm resting along your body, legs slightly bent. The lion's posture is how the Buddha himself lay down to rest. It's named for the strength and alertness of a lion, at rest calm but not unconscious, relaxed but aware. Once you're settled, close your eyes or lower your gaze. Take a moment to arrive fully in your body. Now choose your anchor point, the place where you'll rest your attention to observe the breath. You have two primary options: the nostrils. Notice the sensation of air moving in and out at the tip of your nose or just inside your nostrils. There's a subtle coolness as you inhale, a slight warmth as you exhale. The sensation is delicate, which makes it good for developing concentration, or the abdomen. Notice the rising and falling of your belly as you breathe. Place your hand there if it helps you feel the movement. This anchor point is more obvious, which makes it easier for beginners or when you're very tired. Choose one anchor point and stay with it throughout the practice. Don't switch back and forth. Consistency helps concentration develop. Now, simply observe the breath at your chosen anchor point. You're not trying to breathe a certain way. You're not making it deeper or slower. You're just noticing it exactly as it is. If it's helpful, you can count breaths to help stabilize your attention. Count silently on each exhale. Inhale, exhale 1, inhale, exhale 2, up to 10, then begin again at 1. The counting isn't the point. It's just training wheels for attention. If you lose count, simply start over at 1. If you find yourself at 37, you've been on autopilot, gently return to 1. Or you can skip counting entirely and just stay with the raw sensation of breathing. Breath coming in, breath going out, the whole cycle beginning to end, moment to moment. Notice the texture of the breath. Is it smooth or rough? Notice the temperature: cool air in, warm air out. Notice the rhythm: long breaths, short breaths, the natural pause between them. Don't narrate these observations to yourself. Don't think, now I'm breathing in, now I'm breathing out. Just feel it directly, wordlessly. Your mind will wander. This is guaranteed. It's not a problem. It's not failure. It's just what minds do. Minds think, attention drifts. The practice isn't about never wandering, it's about noticing you've wandered and gently returning. When you realize you've been thinking about tomorrow's schedule or replaying today's conversation, simply acknowledge it, thinking, and bring your attention back to the breath at your anchor point. No judgment, no frustration, no story about how bad you are at this. Just wandered, noticed, returned. That return, that gentle, patient return over and over again is the practice. Each return is a repetition in the gym of attention. Each return strengthens your capacity to choose where your awareness rests. Some breaths will be interesting, bringing pleasant sensations or a sense of calm. Some will be boring, feeling like nothing special at all. Stay with both equally. Interesting or boring, pleasant or neutral, each breath deserves your full attention simply because it's this moment's breath. Continue this practice for 5 to 10 minutes. You can set a gentle timer if you'd like, or simply practice until it feels complete. If you're practicing before sleep, you might find that your attention naturally begins to dissolve as drowsiness arrives. That's fine. Let the practice blend into sleep. Stay with the breath as long as you can maintain awareness, and when sleep comes, welcome it. The breath continues even as you dream. What if I can't focus? If your mind is extremely restless, and you can't follow even a single full breath, that's okay. This is information, not failure. Your nervous system is activated. Try this. Make your object of attention even smaller. Instead of the whole breath cycle, just notice the very first moment of the in-breath. Just that, then just the very first moment of the out-breath. Sometimes narrowing focus helps it sharpen. Or try counting breaths more actively, saying the numbers more deliberately in your mind. Let the counting be a stronger anchor. Remember, even if you can only stay with the breath for 3 seconds before wandering, those 3 seconds count. They accumulate. Don't dismiss small victories. What if breathing feels forced? Sometimes when you bring attention to breath, it suddenly feels unnatural or controlled. You start micromanaging. Should I breathe deeper, slower? Am I doing it right? If this happens, take a few conscious deep breaths, 3 or 4 full deliberate breaths. Then completely let go of control and just observe whatever breathing happens next. Trust that your body knows how to breathe. You might also shift your attention away from breath briefly. Notice sounds around you for 30 seconds or body sensations, then return to breath with fresh attention. Sometimes a brief break resets the relationship. Remember, you've been breathing your entire life without thinking about it. Your body is the expert here. You're just watching the expert work. If struggling continues, be genuinely gentle with yourself. Some nights breath practice flows easily. Some nights it feels difficult. Both are practice, both are valuable. The Buddha spent years refining this technique, and still he taught it with infinite patience. You can offer yourself that same patience. The breath is your anchor. It holds you steady when the mind's waters are rough. It reminds you that this moment, this breath is enough, and tonight, letting that be enough is exactly what allows you to finally let go and rest. There's a teaching in the Anapanasati Sutta, the discourse on mindfulness of the body, where the Buddha describes a practice he considers essential for anyone seeking peace. He's speaking to a group of monks who've been practicing meditation, diligently sitting for hours, following their breath, observing their minds, but something is still missing. Despite their efforts, tension remains. The Buddha asks them a simple question. Do you know what you're holding? The monks look confused. Holding what, venerable sir? Your day, the Buddha says. Your fears, your resistances, your unfinished business. You think these live only in your thoughts, but they live in your body too, in your jaw that stays clenched, in your shoulders that rise toward your ears, in your belly that stays tight against feelings you don't want to feel. He explains that the body is not separate from the mind. The body itself holds memory, holds emotion, holds all the accumulated tension of trying to control what can't be controlled. Before you can truly rest, the Buddha teaches, you must bring awareness to what the body is holding and consciously release it. Not through force, but through gentle, systematic attention, moving through the body like a caring hand, acknowledging each part, inviting it to soften. This teaching becomes the foundation of Anapanasati, mindfulness of the body, the first of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Maybe you've lain in bed exhausted, wanting nothing more than to sleep, but your body won't cooperate. Your muscles stay contracted, your jaw stays tight. You're trying to rest, but some part of you is still braced against the world, still holding tension you don't even know you're carrying. Tonight, you're learning what the Buddha taught those monks, that before the mind can truly release, the body must be given permission to let go. And that permission comes through awareness. Not forcing relaxation, but allowing it to emerge naturally, when the body finally feels safe enough to stop holding. The Buddha taught Anapanasati as the first foundation of mindfulness, because you cannot bypass the body on the path to liberation. The body is not an obstacle to awakening, it's the ground where awakening happens. It's where you actually live, where you actually feel, where suffering is experienced, and where it can be released. In the Anapanasati Sutta, The Buddha describes contemplating the body in extreme detail, the 32 parts of the body. For sleep practice, we simplify this. We're using systematic attention to release accumulated tension. Why does the body hold tension? Because emotions aren't just mental events, they're physical events that create real changes in your muscular system, your nervous system. When you're stressed, your shoulders rise. When you're anxious, your belly tightens. When you're angry, your jaw clenches. When you're afraid, your breath becomes shallow. If you don't consciously release these physical holdings, they accumulate day after day. Your body learns to hold a baseline of tension that becomes your normal. By the time you lie down to sleep, you might think you're relaxed because you're lying still. But check your jaw, is it clenched? Check your shoulders, are they lifted? Most people carry far more tension than they realize, and that tension prevents deep rest. The body scan is different from forced relaxation. It's an invitation. You bring awareness to each area of your body and simply notice what's there, tight or loose, painful or neutral. You're not trying to change it, you're just acknowledging it. And something remarkable happens when you truly acknowledge sensation without trying to fix it. The body often releases on its own, not because you forced it to, but because awareness itself is healing. The Buddha taught this practice with meticulous attention to detail, because rushing through doesn't work. The body needs time. It needs your patient presence, moving through it slowly. When you give the body that attention before sleep, you're sending a message to your nervous system. It's safe now. The vigilance can stop. We can finally rest. Lie down in bed. You can lie on your back with your arms at your sides, palms up, legs slightly apart. Or use the lion's posture, lying on your right side, right hand supporting your head, left arm resting along your body. Close your eyes. Take 3 slow breaths. Bring your attention to the very top of your head, the crown. Just notice what's there. Silently say, soften, release, let go, not commanding it, just inviting it. Move your attention to your forehead. Notice if there's tension here. Soften, release, let go. Your eyes, many people hold tremendous tension around the eyes. Soften, release, let go. Your jaw, let your teeth part slightly. Let your tongue rest heavy in your mouth. Soften, release, let go. Your neck, front and back, left and right. Soften, release, let go. Your shoulders, notice if they are lifted toward your ears. Many people carry their shoulders high, perpetually bracing for impact. Invite them to drop, to melt down. Soften, release, let go. Your arms, move your awareness down through your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms, your wrists. Soften, release, let go. Your hands, each finger, your palms, the backs of your hands. Let them be completely passive, held by gravity. Soften, release, let go. Your chest, this is where breath lives, where heart beats. Notice the rise and fall with each breath. Soften, release, let go. Your upper back, between your shoulder blades, send awareness there. Soften, release, let go. Your belly, this is where many emotions live. Anxiety, fear, grief. Notice if you're holding your belly tight. Let it be completely even if that feels vulnerable. Soften, release, let go. Your lower back, send breath here if you can. Soften, release, let go. Your hips and pelvis, notice if there's gripping here. Allow everything to rest heavily. Soften, release, let go. Your upper legs, your thighs, feel their weight sinking down. Soften, release, let go. Your knees, often we hold tension even in joints. Soften, release, let go. Your lower legs, your calves, your shins, feel the muscles releasing. Soften, release, let go. Your ankles, your feet. Notice each foot, all the small bones and muscles that carried you through the day. Soften, release, let go. Your toes, each one, from big toe to smallest, let them all rest. Soften, release, let go. Now take a moment to sense your whole body at once, from crown to toes, all of it resting, all of it held by the bed beneath you, by gravity, by the earth itself. Notice if there are any areas that still feel tight or tense. You can return your attention there, or simply let them be. Your only job now is to rest here, aware of your body, allowing it to be exactly as it is. Something happens during the body scan. That's different from other practices. As you move your awareness slowly through your body, systematically releasing each area, your consciousness itself begins to change. The alert, focused awareness you started with begins to soften, to blur at the edges. Thoughts become less distinct. The boundary between you and the bed starts to dissolve. This is not a problem, this is the practice working. You're approaching the threshold between waking and sleeping, that liminal space where consciousness hasn't quite turned off but is no longer fully engaged with the waking world. Allow this. Don't fight to stay alert. This drowsy, melting quality is exactly what you want. Let your attention get softer and softer as you continue to scan through your body. If you lose track of where you are, it doesn't matter. If your awareness wanders or fragments, that's fine. You're dissolving into sleep naturally, gradually, gently. Your body is releasing its holdings. Your mind is releasing its grip on wakefulness. Everything is softening together. This is the threshold the Buddha taught about. This is the space where practice meets rest, where effort dissolves into ease. Stay here as long as awareness remains, and when sleep finally comes, let it come. You don't need to finish the body scan. You don't need to stay conscious through to some final point. The body knows how to complete this journey on its own. Your job was just to begin the process of releasing, and now the body takes over, continuing to soften even as you drift into sleep. This is rest as it was meant to be, not forced, not fought for, but allowed to emerge naturally when the body finally feels safe enough, acknowledged enough, seen enough to let go. The Buddha taught, the body is the first foundation. Everything else builds from here. When the body can rest, the mind can rest. When both rest together, peace becomes possible. There's a moment in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the discourse on the Buddha's final nibbana, that's both heartbreaking and beautiful. The Buddha is 80 years old. He's been teaching for 45 years, walking thousands of miles across India, establishing communities of practitioners, pointing countless beings toward liberation. Now, his body is failing. He knows his time has come. He's walking with his attendant Ananda toward a grove of sala trees near Kusinara. When they arrive, the Buddha asks Ananda to prepare a bed between two sala trees. Ananda spreads cloth on the ground and then the Buddha lies down. The text is very specific about how he lies, on his right side, one foot resting on the other, with his right hand supporting his head, his left arm resting along his body. This is the Sihasana, the lion's posture. It's called this because it's the way a lion rests alert even in repose, dignified, grounded, neither tense nor collapsed. The Buddha lies down in this posture and continues to teach. He speaks with clarity, offering final instructions to his disciples. He reminds them that all conditioned things are impermanent. He encourages them to work out their liberation with diligence. And then, maintaining full awareness, he passes through the stages of meditative absorption and enters final nibbana. He does this lying down, maintaining clarity and presence until the very last moment. This image has stayed with Buddhist practitioners for 2,500 years. Not the Buddha sitting cross-legged on a meditation cushion, but the Buddha lying on his side at rest, yet fully awake, modeling something essential. That meditation doesn't require a particular rigid form. That awareness can be maintained in any posture, including the posture of rest. That lying down isn't giving up on practice, it can be practice itself. For you tonight, the lion's posture is about preparing for sleep in a way that honors both rest and awareness, that allows you to maintain presence as long as you can, and then to release into sleep with dignity. The lion's posture is simple but specific. Lie on your right side, bring your legs together or allow them to be slightly bent, one knee resting on the other. Place your right hand under your right cheek as a natural pillow. Your right arm can be bent, elbow forward, creating comfortable support for your head. Your left arm rests along the length of your body, left hand on your left hip or thigh. The arm is relaxed, just gently resting. Your spine should be relatively straight but not rigid. There's a quality of alert ease. Why this particular posture? Lying on your right side allows your heart to rest in a more open position, not compressed by other organs. It aids digestion, allowing gravity to help move food through the digestive system. But more importantly, there's something about this posture that balances rest and awareness. When you lie on your back, you're very susceptible to falling immediately into unconscious sleep or snoring. When you lie on your left side, the heart is compressed. When you lie on your stomach, breathing becomes restricted, but the right side holds a middle way. You're comfortable enough to relax, grounded enough to feel safe, but there's a subtle quality of wakefulness that remains just a bit longer. This is the posture for maintaining awareness as long as possible, while still allowing sleep to come naturally. The Buddha chose this posture for his final moments, not by accident. He'd spent decades exploring every possible meditation posture, and in the end, for the ultimate transition, he chose the lion's posture. Not because it keeps you awake through force, but because it allows you to remain present without struggle, to maintain clarity without grasping. When you practice lying down meditation before sleep, you're not trying to stay awake all night. You're establishing a quality of awareness that you maintain as long as you can, and then, when sleep naturally comes, you allow the transition to happen with grace. No forcing sleep, no forcing wakefulness, just being present with what is for as long as presence lasts. This is what the Buddha modeled, awareness held gently until it naturally dissolves. Arrange your body in the lion's posture as described. Take your time getting comfortable. Adjust your pillow if needed. Once you're settled, take 3 full breaths. Feel your body making contact with the bed. Now, establish your mental stance. Your intention is simple. I will maintain awareness as long as I can, and when sleep comes, I will allow it. That's it now. Choose what to do with your attention. You can continue with gentle breath awareness, just noticing the natural rhythm of breathing, the coolness and warmth at your nostrils. Or you can continue with metta practice, silently offering loving kindness. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I rest well. Or you can simply rest in open awareness, noticing whatever arises, sounds, sensations, the quality of darkness behind your closed eyes. Whichever you choose, keep it gentle, keep it soft. You're maintaining a thread of awareness while everything else begins to wind down. Your mind will start to drift. Thoughts will become dreamlike, less linear. The boundary between waking and sleeping will start to blur. Allow this. Don't snap yourself back to sharp attention. This softening is exactly what's supposed to happen. You might notice yourself starting to dream while still vaguely aware you're lying in bed. You might notice your body getting heavier, your breath slowing. You might notice awareness itself beginning to flicker. All of this is the natural process of falling asleep. You're just staying with it, consciously as long as you can. At some point, awareness will dissolve completely into sleep. You'll simply be asleep. This is not failure, this is success. You maintained presence as long as presence was possible. Some nights you might maintain awareness for 10 minutes before sleep comes, some nights only 2 minutes. Some nights you might fall asleep immediately. All of this is fine. All of this is practice. The practice is bringing the intention to be present, and then honestly meeting whatever capacity for presence you have tonight. Some masters say that falling asleep while meditating is one of the most profound practices, because in that threshold moment, there's a loosening of the ego's grip that doesn't happen any other time. And in that letting go, something deep is learned. The Buddha maintained awareness through his final transition. He stayed present through each dissolving of consciousness until the final release. You're not there yet, you're just going to sleep, but the principle is the same. Meeting the threshold with awareness, with dignity, with willingness to let go. Sleep is meditation's continuation. The awareness you cultivate before sleep doesn't just vanish, something of it carries through, even into dreaming, even into the deepest rest. Tonight, you're learning to trust the process. Learning that you can bring practice right up to the edge of sleep and then release, without fear, without grasping. This is the final surrender. The Buddha modeled not giving up but letting go, not collapsing in defeat but releasing with grace. Lie in the lion's posture, maintain awareness as long as you can, and when sleep comes, welcome it as the natural continuation of your practice. The Buddha's final words were, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Work out your liberation with diligence." And then he let go completely, trustingly. Tonight, you do the same. You've walked through 10 practices tonight, 10 doorways the Buddha opened and left unlocked for anyone seeking rest. Refuge, evening recollection, forgiveness, gratitude, relaxation, metta, noting, breath awareness, body scan, and the lion's posture, each one a complete path to peace. You don't need all 10 every night. Listen to what you need. If guilt weighs on you, emphasize forgiveness and gratitude. If anxiety dominates, focus on metta, noting and breath. If disconnection is your struggle, return to the refuges daily. Start simple tonight. Refuges, metta, breath awareness, then lie down in the lion's posture. 4 practices, 20 minutes, creating a complete arc from safety to final release. Try this for a week. Notice what happens. Adjust as needed. Some nights, 1 practice is enough. Consistency matters more than perfection. 5 minutes every night builds a stronger foundation than an hour once a week. The practice grows with you, deepens over time, becomes as natural as breathing. Now, lie down. Take 3 slow breaths. Feel your body held by the bed beneath you. Silently offer yourself these words. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I rest well. Your breath continues slow and steady. Your body softens. Awareness blurs at the edges. May your sleep be peaceful. May your dreams be gentle. May you wake refreshed and clear. May you be held by the Dharma through the night. You've done enough. You are enough. Sleep well.